listening to the Full Court Press with your host, Drew Duncan. Don't you dare touch that dial. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Full Court Press. I am your host, Drew Duncan. Don't forget, I am on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at Drew Duncan 83. Minnesota Vikings, the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, earlier in the week, I asked a couple of questions about Case Keenum. I asked, are we enamored with this kid? Are we in awe of this kid? Are we waiting for him to fall flat on his face? Are we inspired by him? I mean, I asked a plethora of questions when it came to Case Keenum because he was so talked about and so loved for what he had done through this season. Because think about it. Case Keenum, as I alluded to earlier in the week, replaced two starters in this league, one of them being a veteran guy in Sam Bradford. No, he hadn't been to the playoffs yet, but had showed when he's healthy, he's as good as any quarterback in the NFL. The problem is people will say he's made out of glass, and I'm not going to dispute that. But the big story was Terry Bridgewater. Terry Bridgewater came back in the NFL and was ready to go. And instead of playing Terry Bridgewater, they stayed with Case Keenum. And it wasn't as big a conversation as I thought it was going to be. But they decided to stick with him. And the fact of the matter is Case Keenum did way more than any of us expected. Come on, let's be honest. When Case Keenum got hurt, nobody said Minnesota Vikings are going to go deep into the playoffs. That conversation didn't happen. It didn't exist. And why wouldn't it? He was a journeyman in the NFL. Wasn't going anywhere in his career. Did all these great things in college with Houston, the Cougars, but everybody went, come on. You know, that was with what conference, at what team, and yeah, whatever. Big deal, right? Comes in with some hype behind him, can't get anything done. He goes to the Minnesota Vikings, and it seems like, oh, they really know how to use this kid. And they did, and they do. But they didn't unleash him tonight. We're going to get into that in a minute. The bottom line here is Philadelphia Eagles dictated every part of this football game, every facet. Offensively, defensively, special teams, anything you could think of. The Philadelphia Eagles dominated, and they did exactly what needed to be done to win this game. Now, when you get to the Minnesota Vikings and you think about Case Keenum, you have to, without any question whatsoever, think to yourself, was he the guy? Of course he was. Think about the way that these guys carry themselves in the locker room. I alluded to it earlier in the week. You've got three guys, all capable passers, two of them very good mobility. And yet we see how it all turned out. The coaching staff stuck with Case Keenum, and that was a gutsy call. And one of the questions I asked was, are we waiting for this kid to fall flat on his face, which happened today? But now what happens with the Minnesota Vikings going forward? Do they continue with Case Keenum? Is Terry Bridgewater now on the market? What about Sam Bradford? Been a starter in this league for how long? Is he willing to be a backup? For as great as all three of these guys were during the season, and they're not really, at least to my knowledge, any reports coming out as of yet with animosity in the locker room, who should have been the starter, whose side is everybody on? Because you could easily point back to the 49ers when they won the Super Bowl, defeated the Denver Broncos. And there was division within the ranks in that locker room about whether Joe Montana or Steve Young should be the guys. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to talk about Tom Brady, and deservedly so. And I get it. You know, people are going to talk about Nick Foles and say, well, it looked like Nick Foles in 2013, and Nick Foles this, and oh, he was so good, and blah, 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 blah. You want to know what the deciding factor was? This was one of those games that was a true team effort from the Philadelphia Eagles. Defensively, stifling. Offensively, a lot of effort plays, something I talked about at the beginning of the week, something that the Philadelphia Eagles did that I thought really propelled them to where they are now. You know, I was still on the Eagles bandwagon saying that they were going to be the team to go to the Super Bowl regardless of anything. And I was one of the few. And look, I get it. Hey, Carson Wentz goes down. He's having an MVP year. He's carrying the load. But for some reason, you don't hear about this receiving core, Jesse Hurts at tight end, or the running backs at all. You don't hear about them at all. Carson Wentz goes down, and suddenly we're not talking about how the Eagles went off and required Ajayi from the Miami Dolphins. Quote, well, they're really priming for a Super Bowl now, adding that extra piece. Suddenly we're not talking about Fox in the defense. Or, pardon me, Fletcher Cox in the defense. We're not talking about that, right? No. Not doing that. It's just Carson Wentz. You know, I think that the Philadelphia Eagles proved that they are not a one-man crew, but they are a team. And look, there were two very young teams in this game, but they were two very young teams who beat two teams with a lot of veterans. Drew Brees, Matty Ice, Julio Jones. Think about that for a moment. Think about what it took to get to this point. And think about how everybody talked about how weak their schedules were. And look, you could allude to the Minnesota Vikings and go, Case Keenum and the Vikings had the great fortune of being in the NFC North. Chicago Bears weren't very good, and Mitchell Trubisky comes in, but they're still not great. He's a rookie. He had flash moments, but not quite there yet, obviously. Still very new to the NFL. Detroit Lions, a lot of potential. Can't get it done. You can allude to 101 things, coaching, blah, 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 blah. Bottom line is they didn't win games. You could talk about the Green Bay Packers, all the injuries they had, namely Aaron Rodgers. And you go, well, they had the good fortune of being the NFC North this year. You talk about the Philadelphia Eagles having the good fortune of being in the NFC East this year. What would you say that about the New England Patriots? Would you say the Dolphins were a top-tier team? Would you say the Buffalo Bills were difficult to contend with? Would you say that any other team out of their division was exclusive in terms of how good they were in the NFL? That anytime anybody faced a team out of the AFC East, that they were, quote, top-tier teams? Think about that. Think about what the Philadelphia Eagles did against teams in the AFC. Think about how they beat Denver. Yeah, sure, they lost to Kansas City, but a close game very early in the season, and we saw how this team progressed throughout the end of the year. What I'm alluding to and what the bottom line here is for me is this. The Philadelphia Eagles, number one, dictated every facet of this game. Already said that. But number two, they played with a chip on their shoulder. They took it personally that everybody was writing them off, that they were the first ever underdog as a number one seed to a number 6 seed ever in the playoffs. They took it personal that they were an underdog against the Minnesota Vikings going into this game. They took it personal that they were at home in the playoffs, and yet everybody said that they're just not good enough. And now they're going to be compared to the last Philadelphia Eagles football team to go to a playoff or to a Super Bowl game, pardon me. And Nick Foles and Donovan McNabb are unquestionably two different quarterbacks. Donovan McNabb got so freaked out during the end of that game. Dude is puking. He's throwing up all over the place, and he's pointing like this, and he can't even get his team past a 20, 30-yard line, whatever it was. Spending 25 seconds at the line of scrimmage just doing this move because he couldn't contain himself. Nick Foles stays so poised throughout the better part of this football game. That is, I mean, he shined like a veteran quarterback. And that was one of the questions that I asked. Can Nick Foles act like a top-tier quarterback in this league? And he did. For Case Keenum, what do you think? Is he the future of the Minnesota Vikings? What did he do at Bridgewater? What did he do at Bradford? Is Case Keenum now a hot commodity to go to any team in the NFL and maybe not only earn a payday, but an automatic starting role wherever he goes? Are you glad to see him fall flat on his face? Oh, I knew it the whole time. Keenan wasn't going to do anything. Come on, did you really? Moving forward for the Philadelphia Eagles and the New England Patriots, this is going to be a different type of game. What I'm looking forward to the most is the chess game because both of these defenses are premier in the NFL. As far as the Minnesota Vikings are concerned, one of the greatest seasons in NFL history, again, that just didn't quite get it done. Didn't quite get it done. For the Philadelphia Eagles, if they're able to win a Super Bowl against Tom Brady and the storied New England Patriots over the last 16 years, it could potentially be the greatest Super Bowl victory of all time, even more so than when the Giants beat an undefeated Tom Brady and the New England Patriots in what was really a truly great Super Bowl. But if the Eagles do that without their starting guy, it will prove once and for all that not only Doug Peterson is a true head coach in this league, but the Philadelphia Eagles have potentially put together one of the greatest football teams ever, because without their star quarterback, they have proved and will prove if they win that no matter what the odds are, if you have a great team who plays with that mentality and trusts their quarterback and trust the guy next to him, then you will win big games, championship games in this league. This is the Full Court Press. I am Drew Duncan. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's all at Drew Duncan 83. Don't forget you can find me on YouTube at Drew Duncan. We'll be back right after this. Don't you dare touch that dial.